Hello, my friends. How are you? Happy hump day. My name is Natasha, and I am here again chatting with you. It's been a heck of a day. I, life is just so interesting, right? Like, you have all these kind of realizations, and then it just has this funny way of like having like proof and evidence. So I've been reading a new audiobook, which again, I tell you, I don't read them per se. Although I do have a couple in there they don't have audiobooks for, and that I have checked out like to read. I just haven't like really got a system yet to really get that foundation in to get the reading. And so one thing that I'm thinking about incorporating is, instead of hopping on to like Facebook when I just like needed downtime for a minute, is to maybe like, if I'm hopping on my phone, hop on and read the book. So that's what I am. But I've started and stopped like a couple recent books recently. I don't know. They were it's like, sometimes some books are just too clinical, too like scientific. It's like, I want to hear the stories. Like, give me some science, and then give me some proof. Like, give me your story. Like, get me invested in it. When it's just like data points and things like this, I get so dang bored. Like, I'm not in a science class in high school. Like, I have other things that I would rather be listening to, and then I just find myself tuning out what it is. But I actually am starting a book by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I don't know, like, I just thought, well, that sounds interesting. And, it's so cool because I actually get and like him or not, whatever, that's your total opinion. Like, I don't, I grew up with him. My dad loved Arnold Schwarzenegger. My uncle loved Arnie, he would call him. And, I just thought it was interesting. And then he was actually, and again, I love when the authors actually record their own audiobooks. I think it's phenomenal because you just get their own tone, their own perspectives. Like, I don't know, it just has a different je ne sais quoi to it. And I have like, so it's his voice, but I have it at like 1.85. And so it's like sometimes I have to be like, back up 10 seconds, like, wait a minute, what did he say here? Or this is like a really good point. I really want to try to get it. But what I've been talking about here, a lot of the things like thus far, that I just started it last night. And, so I've only had like a couple car rides with it. Thus far, it's like, he's literally reiterating like the things I'm saying, talking about how, like, shoot for the moon, make a big goal, but then you have these little micro things you do. And then like his insane, intense work ethic is just, to me, is an admirable thing. Like, to me, it is like what has gotten me to where I am. It's like setting up that foundation. It's a lot about how, like keeping that consistency and having that discipline in there. And like how he was saying too, like a lot of like the parts of the thing, like he was talking about, like, even in a movie or something, like, how many hours he would spend like practicing, like, a prop, and then, to get it to look in a certain way. And I just, you forget it. And I always have had this thing, and I've always told my kids this, like, the work you do in the shadows, the work you do when nobody's telling you, like the workouts I do when I'm outside of a class, the, workouts I do that, nobody knows about. It's nobody's business. I mean, I'll tell them if they want the thing, but it's not like I'm doing this, or it's like, and that's easy to say because, like, I'm an adult, I'm in my own thing, but like, like when you're on a team or something, like, it's the work that you do outside of the norm that I think is what makes you special and unique. It's what, like I tell my kids, cause I'm like, okay, think about it. Like, within like natural talents and not, like, everybody has their own abilities. You have different height, you have, you have a different dominant foot. You maybe are a little bit more ambidextrous with your feet. Perhaps you're a little bit more crafty with your feet, and you can be a little more creative. You're more technical. Perhaps like you're a speed demon and you run really fast, maybe your hand-eye coordination is phenomenal and you're a keeper, or, there's so many different strengths and weaknesses that you bring to a team, right? And you know, I say this all the time to my kids that like, okay, here you are. And yeah, when you're young, sometimes maybe you're more exposed to the sport, or you're just naturally gifted, or perhaps you have siblings or friends who also enjoy it. So you're playing it more. And then, you know, like by nature, by just accident, you're almost like getting better, right? You're getting better because you're having more immersion into it versus the player who, you know, only comes in for his practices and only comes for his games. And then, you know, has maybe perhaps many other endeavors that they're interested in, and they're not dedicating that much time. And maybe they're just really, really naturally talented. And, you know, there are those like phenoms too. But mostly what I have seen is the players that put in that extra time, like come home from school or get up early and go to the gym, or get up early and practice their craft, or come home from school and practice their craft. Like at some point you kind of all, like around this middle teen age, you kind of all level out, right? Like you're saying, so now the playing field is level, and you actually, like the players that, you know, are continually working when nobody else is. So like, say this player right here, he's getting 10 hours of work a week. He puts in really hard work, those 10 hours. But then you got over here, player B, and not only is he getting those 10 hours, but he's saying, hey, dad, can you go out and practice me? Hey, mom, can you go practice me? Hey, sibling. Hey, nobody else wants to? Hey, I'm going to go out by myself. And this person, they spend even an extra 5 minutes or an extra 10 minutes. Or maybe they get lost in time after they've set this 5-minute goal and they're out there for 5 hours. And that growth just happens exponentially. I mean, it happens in so many things. It happens with our finances, right? Like we can put in $5 a day. We can put in $5 a day, and you're like, okay, cool. I got $10, you know, okay, cool. But soon, right? That investment starts to compound at some point. And, you know, like my gratitude jar here, it's my gratitude gushings. And at first there was one, it was like a lonely little sticky, you know, post-it note folded up in there. And then suddenly there were two, and now there's a vibrant array of colors in my gushings gratitude jar, and it just keeps building. And so I think like for me, like what makes sense is like just knowing the fundamentals, setting like the tone of like, these are the fundamentals. So like what we do in the shadows, like what we do when nobody's watching, like you have the choice right now. Are you laying in bed and veg? And there's zero judgment. There are no wrong or right answers. This, my friends, it's your life. So you do you, boo, like whatever works for you. There is no like, you don't have to be this extra and go to the limits and everything like that. But there are few people out there, and that's who I'm talking to, that will get this. Or maybe you're still fascinating. You don't personally want to be there, but you love to watch a show. Like there are people that are completely content with a normal average life, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just for me personally, when I've been in this odd situation of a life where from a very young age, death was around me all the time, you know, either by my mom attempting it, or people have, you know, I've had friends commit suicide. I've had family members that were healthy one day get cancer and die within 3 months. I've had another one, you know, get cancer and die within a year. I've had another one, you know, my son died in front of me. Like, you know, the near deaths of my own kids, and, you know, just by nature, you know, friends' parents, you know, like my kids' friends' parents, like, you know, freak random things have happened. And, you know, it just is such this reminder to me that life is so fragile. And, you know, I spent so much of my life being okay with being okay. Like I was okay to be average. I was okay blending in. I was okay fitting in and just having these desires of wanting, you know, the house with the white picket fence, and then being content that I didn't have it. You know, yeah, there was a part of me sad, but I wasn't doing anything extra to go out there and grab it and get it. Or at least, even if, okay, let's say, even if I miss and I didn't get it, what did I lose? What did I lose? Some time that I tried to go out there and live what that dream was to me. I'm not saying that still is my dream, to have the house with the white picket fence. Like, my kids are older. Like when I was young, you know, before I had kids, and even at the beginning of when I had kids, I had this fantasy, right? Like I'd live on a court, I'd have a beautiful pool, you know, we'd have lots of games and pool tables, and the kids and their friends would love to come over, and we'd have good snacks, and we'd barbecue and have pizza and all these things. And life didn't work out that way. Living in California, getting married super young, not having any additional support, working for ourselves. I was afraid to make decisions. Like when I did have the opportunity to buy houses, I was like, listen, I don't know with our self-employment, like if we're going to be able to make these payments. So I'm not going to commit to something that I don't know 1000% I'm going to be able to succeed. And if I could go back in time, I would have changed that. But again, that's just a learning lesson, because I was just really conservative and I didn't do the wrong thing. But when 2008 happened and everybody was getting their stuff written off and all, and I was like, listen, I would have survived. Like I would have, you know, fared well. And then after that, like, you know, lending, you know, became super, super tight. And then, you know, when it loosened up again, everything was like multi-million dollars. And I'm like, listen, I have 4 kids. I have this, like I'm choosing right now to use my energy to focus on being their mom. Because if I go out there and get a job in order for us to go live in this house, I'm never going to be able to see them, because I'm going to have to do so much work in order to just pay the bills. So consciously, I made these choices to live in a very small house, but in a great community that was very supportive of us. And it was a place that my kids could go to school, and I don't have to worry about them being hurt or, you know, being with the wrong crowds. They have amazing friends. They have amazing friends' families. Like, you know, they have great recreational things and extracurriculars. It's a wonderful town to raise your family in. And, you know, so now that, you know, that dream of having this, you know, big house with the pool and all these things. Well, now if my kids are growing up and not going to be there, what do I need a big house for? To show somebody else, you know, like, yeah, of course, there's a part of me that like always wanted to have this, you know, big and lovely house. And who doesn't admire a big, gorgeous home, or, you know, perfectly decorated and things like that. And yeah, you can say, okay, well, for the grandkids or whatever. And maybe at some point I will, but I think I'm also coming to this stage where, you know, I just see that there's so much to this world. Like sometimes I hear of parents that, I say Pleasanton is a great town. I love it. However, like I'll hear some parents and it was like, they grew up here, they went to school here, and now they're here with their kids raising their families. And I'm like, that sounds like absolute heck to me. Like, there's just it's such a big world that there's probably thousands of Pleasantons out there that aren't Pleasanton, you know, like, and it's comfortable, right? Like, you know, your kids know the areas, you know exactly what, you know, you can close your eyes and get to the grocery stores. Like you have your routines. It's very comfortable. It's very safe. But I'm coming into the era of my life where I'm ready to explore. Like I was ready to explore 25 years ago, and I put that dream and that desire on hold, and I've had a wonderful life. Like, you know, like for all the things that I'll sit here and I'll also say, like, you know, here are my challenges, because again, it is my belief that we learn the most through the challenges. We learn the most through the mistakes. You know, we have the most character building moments when, you know, we mess up or we see a mess up, or, you know, we experience something. So yeah, I'm going to share those things, but you know, there's just the way that I have had this ability to reframe and learn from these things. There's nothing different than me though, besides just putting in the effort and time. And is it always easy? No, it's hard. Like today I had, you know, a moment, like, cause you just don't foresee, right? You're experiencing these things. Like I'm here and I'm like having fun and I'm like, I'm enjoying this. Like, I love this. I get to sit here and talk with people for an hour, even though I'm kind of talking to myself. I was like, you know, it'd be a little bit more fun if I had somebody to interview, like maybe like, you know, I'll incorporate that. Like I'll interview, like, you know, a lot of people go out there and interview famous people. Like maybe I'll sit here and I'll interview just not famous people. Like they have great stories too. Like, you know, just because, you know, everybody knows the famous people, like, you know, like, I don't know. So I was thinking, because I love everybody's story. Like today at the gym, I met a new person and I heard her story, and, you know, ended up, she was like, yes, I just recently started intermittent fasting too, because she wanted to hear about my journey. And, you know, so I told her the quick little Cliff Note version of it. And so, yeah, like, you know, I think that in life, there's so many challenges, but there are so many triumphs, right? There are so many moments where we win, but, you know, like when we go back and we learn from them, it is also difficult. Like, it is not just easy. Like, oh yeah, okay, I had this breakthrough and yay, okay, great. You know, oh my gosh, I didn't see for 47, well, I'm not 40. Okay, I've been 24 years. Let's reframe that. I haven't known Chris for 47. I never noticed that all the connections, like on paper, and if you even just see them standing, my dad is super tall, Chris is short. You know, like my dad is like a hype man, Chris is not. You know, my dad's super talkative, Chris is not. Like, there's so many ways in which they aren't alike on paper, like superficially. If you think about it, you know, they don't look alike, you know, like, but then when I started to break it down, when Chris had that night that he came home inebriated and, you know, all that stuff, it dawned on me, like, when I went, and what it was not even seeing him in that condition. It was my kids seeing him in that condition, how each one individually responded. And then I felt like an anger. I felt a sadness. I felt annoyance. And what I realized when I started, you know, unpeeling that onion was I was frustrated that he had been irresponsible and put himself in a position that then put our kids in a position that I was often in as a kid. And so it kind of, again, was, you know, and then I had to go and have conversations with the kids and say, you know, here's this, you know, like kind of like fix it, smooth it over for them, even though it never would, you know, like it's not going to fix it. It's not going to, you know, but like have some kind of conversation, have some kind of adult conversation where it's not just sitting in their mind, because I lacked that. Nobody ever talked about it. It just, those things happened. We went on about the next day. And then sometimes they were just funny stories that came up later on that my dad was like, yeah, I did this and da-da-da. But there was never any kind of like, how was that for you? It was just like a story in a group setting. It was never like a, you know, so I'm sure he feels shame or his own, you know, ways about the, you know, some of the behaviors he did and feels sorry or whatever. But there was never like an apology, or there was never like a conversation about it at the time or ever since, right? So, you know, I was frustrated that like, you know, now my kids are in this kind of position of seeing their dad in a very, you know, fragile-ish state, you know, like, and everything ended up being fine or whatever. It's okay, right? But like that, like connected, where I was like, boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. Like, this wasn't the first time Chris came home like this, like, you know, and it was just like, and it just was like, they're both very hard workers. They both like our youngest kids. Like, there were just so many things that I was like, oh, how did I miss all this? And what it was beyond like the similarities, right? Like, let's go to the next layer of this onion. Beyond the similarities, the problem is my feelings. Like, it, you know, for me, this is not for them. Like, this is my work. Okay. So the problem for me is they evoke the same emotion, the same thing that like, it is my duty. It is my responsibility to take care of you. It is my duty to like put my wishes and my dreams and my desires and my boundaries and my everything to the side. You are the important one. You are the one that gets all the, you know, attention and everything. You get what you want. The job here is to appease you and make sure you're happy and you're okay. And even if and when you harm me, and I say something, if it upsets you, now I have to take it back and say anything. So now either you don't ever have to apologize or make amends or repair or anything like that. It becomes about you. And if I say anything, it's like, see, I'm not good enough. I'm just a terrible person. And I'm like, that's not the point. We're trying to learn here. Like I'm just trying to communicate. This is how I feel. And so, having these realizations, and then like, again, these are happening on a rapid thing because I don't know they're coming. When I sit down again, I know I probably should have a plan and here's what we're going to talk about today. And perhaps it will evolve to that. This is still very new to me, even though I'm doing it consistently. And I'm super proud of that because like, I can, again, just like my gratitude gushings and then the hours that the kids put in, with their own, activities. This is the same thing. I can go look at my camera roll, and on January 1st of 2024, there were 0 videos that I could potentially post. And now there's over, I don't know, what is there? What day are we here? Like 38, 40? I have no idea. I should go back and count it out. Like, hopefully they'll start getting posted day by day by day by day. And I'm now like ahead of the game because I've got this little stockpile, and I'm a big league stockpiler. Like I've always been that way. I remember when the pandemic hit, this was again for my Aunt Betty, because it was just like, she was of the theory, like always be prepared. And this was one thing that I don't want to spoil anything about the Schwarzenegger book if you decide to go read it. But it was, my aunt was a big person on having a plan B and a plan C. And, he is like, scrap your plan B, like F the plan B. Like what you need to do is have that plan A and make it happen. Like, when you're creating a plan B, you're already like, admitting failure to your other one. And I'm torn. So, because that's a new concept for me. I've been really raised as having a plan B and C, but again, I am trying to put myself in positions where I am learning different people's perspectives. Do I agree with them always? No. Am I fascinated by them? 1,000%. And so hearing them kind of opens like my mind, as if there was like a close, like, oh, you have to have a plan B and that's just the way it is. I didn't think in my mind, of his theory and of his philosophy. And so that doesn't mean I need to adapt it, but I'm curious. And so maybe, like I play with it, and that's kind of how I go about it. But yeah, so having these kind of breakthroughs, phenomenal, right? Like I can say, like, I feel lighter in my body. I feel like suddenly, like I will do a stretch, and it's this weird, different kind of like popping release kind of thing. And I'm like, I swear to you, like the last bit of weight and stuff that I'm holding on to, granted, I eat good. Like I'm telling you, Friday morning, I'm going to the patisserie and I am getting myself some goodies for this weekend. I exhibited self-control last weekend because I've already had the joy of experiencing her goodies. And, in my way of supporting was, I'm going to do her Yelp. I didn't want to do it. Again, I'm always like thinking 25 steps ahead. Like I didn't want to do it when this bakery wasn't open yet. So I did it the night before it was grand opening, and, just that way that you can see things. And I will be updating my pictures on there with the next goodies. I love that I have the inside tip, and I found out there's a creme brulee Danish that's coming home with me if it's available that day. And, I can't say it. It's like Kujiman. My gosh, I need to parler-vous français. Oui, a little better. Je m'appelle Natasha. And, but yeah, like, so anyways, I say all this to say, like, so I believe that my recent progress has been a result of because there's no change in the physical. I am still doing the same workouts. I'm still doing the same step count. There has been nothing. And I was at like a nice plateau, and I'm cool. Like I say, my goal wasn't to be a number on a scale. My goal wasn't to get on the cover of Sports Illustrated here for the senior citizen set. Like none of that was the goal. The goal was to be healthy, and I've achieved that. Like when I weighed in one of the last times and I went to that BMI calculator and it said healthy and the tears streamed down my face, I was like, hey, look, mama made it. Do-do-do-do. Like I was so happy, right? Like that's a dream. I know, like statistically speaking, because when I was morbidly obese, it made me feel better to know like, oh, well, half of America is obese. So, you know, like, yeah, I'm not, you know, I was perfectly average at that point, you know, if that's the statistic. I don't know what the real number is, but you know, I was willing to read the 50% and I took it. I said, yep. So I'm average. Yes, it's not good, but you know, I'm with the rest of you crew. Like, you know, we're all in this together. And, you know, like I say, so, but the only thing that has changed and been the recent kind of very slow, very minor, like I say, people will notice because they see me more than I see me, you know, like in a way, because, you know, when you see your kids grow, right? Like, and you see them every day, you don't see the changes. And then you look at a picture and you're like, oh my gosh, you've grown so much. Or, you know, there's some benchmark where they're taller than you now. Or, you know, before they were like shorter than the table and now they're hitting their head on a table. Or somebody says, oh my gosh, they've grown. And then you're like, oh, that's so weird because it doesn't seem like it to you because you're right there. So I see myself every day. In as much as I say, like, I don't like looking at myself when I dance. Like when I run, I have no problem. And again, that took a long time. Like I had to get a full length mirror and I put it in here. It was my daughter's. I didn't have to go out and buy it. Cause again, Miss Frugo over here ain't gonna go buy a full blown mirror just to check herself out. But no, like in order to get comfortable with myself, and this one was kind of inspired by Mel Robbins. So she had this whole high five theory and I was really fascinated by it. And, you know, for a little while I was doing it. It doesn't connect with me per se. Like I don't have it as part of my thing. However, like the just looking in my mirror, there were aspects of it that did work for me. So like for me, what I do is like when I do my running, I will run and I look at the mirror, like when I'm not looking out the window or anything. But before, it used to be like, I would not look at myself. And I just like, I will look over and I will see me in all my glory, you know, running or moving around. And I just am like, I'm so proud of you. Like if I, you know, like if I make eye contact with me, like I just say something. So like, and it's just natural, like, and or I'll smile or something like that. Cause it's just something simple. It doesn't have to be just the same way I would treat the cashier or the person preparing my food or the waitress or somebody in a class. Or, you know, like today when I walked into the gym and the lady behind the desk, she's like, there you are, Miss Smiley, always walking in here with a big smile on your face. Every time. And, you know, so this is the impact I'm leaving on people. And that's what they remember me for. And that is so special to me. And so why not be that smiley back to myself? You know, why not say the compliment to myself? Then I stood there and I talked to her for a few minutes. I found out she was out of town. I was like, yeah, where were you last week? And she went out of town to Palm Springs with her grandson, who's 20 years old. He wanted his grandparents to take him to Palm Springs. I said, you are a lucky lady. Like my grandma was my best friend in this world. So the fact that like, I love that so much. I'm like, if I ever hear that question where like somebody says like, you know, who would you have lunch with for past or present, you know, anybody. And I know people are out there, they're like Lincoln, you know, or, you know, some astronaut, you know, somebody, something. And I'm like straight up grandma. I mean, so much so. Like I say, like it was a couple weeks ago and I walked in the house and it smelled like my grandma and I just almost fell to my knees. Like I immediately after that was like, I need to start cooking some of this Russian food. Like I wanted her tastes. I do have, she used to knit. And so I have a few of her knitted items in a Ziploc bag. And sometimes I'll unzip the Ziploc very quick, very small, very in a corner, and I'll just smell it and it still smells like her. And I'm like, oh my gosh. There was that song, I think it was by, oh my gosh, it's not Stone Temple Pilots. And now that's what's sticking in my head. It's definitely not Stone Temple Pilots. It's way more of this era. But it talks about this song about how, about the smell, like about being childhood and stuff like that. And then it says something about the smell. Like he would put it into a candle if he could. And, but then he realizes nobody else would buy it except for maybe his brother. And, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on, and I'm like Arctic Monkeys, but it's not Arctic Monkeys either. Anyways, I could hear the song in my head, but I can't think of who it is. Anyways, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's like this smell to anybody else may be repulsive and maybe like, okay, cool, whatever, it's just a smell. But hers was a very distinct smell. It was just a very, and everybody knew, like my, you know, like since she's passed, like I've talked about it with my brother, I've talked about it with my cousin. Like it was just like, it smells like grandma. Like it just smells like grandma, and that's it. And it wasn't like a grandma musty smell, thank God. You know, like that ain't it for me. Like, it isn't like the smell you get when you walk into Goodwill. No. It was a different smell that I've never smelt on anybody else except for grandma. And so it wasn't like a perfume or anything like that. It was just grandma. Period. Just straight up grandma. It was her pheromones, whatever it was. But I say all that to say what I was getting to all along. It's coming here. We're getting closer, getting a little closer, warmer. The point is all these breakthroughs are amazing. Having this opportunity and the courage to share them on a very public platform is very courageous, in my opinion. Like for me, this is a courageous thing. Other people will be like, who cares, whatever. But for me, it is. And especially when my children are still, like my one child is still in school, because what I say potentially could come back to affect him in a way. And and I'm very protective. I'm very much a mama bear. So to like put myself out there and put my family in the line of fire is a scary thought sometimes. And so I think that there's probably something there too about why I haven't quite yet, even though I've had their permission to publish them, because although they have given me permission, they're kids. They don't know what they're giving permission to. It's like, I'm consenting, but do you know what you're consenting to? And they grew up on this stuff, so they have an idea of what they're consenting to. So it's not like they're like, they've been born and raised in Siberia and they've never, experienced the internet or TikTok or, YouTube or cyberbullying. They are very aware of all of these things. But I'm getting closer. But having all these breakthroughs does have an emotional impact on me. And it may not feel it in the moment, right? Like it feels like a relief. It feels like, you have a knuckle that needs to be cracked and it's like, like your back is like really tight and, you get into a really good stretch or you get it cracked and you have this like release, right? Like, and it feels so good. But on the same turn, there's a moment where afterwards it's like, ow, actually that kind of hurts a little bit, like, and I don't feel hurt by it. Like again, a lot of this is happening so subconsciously and then emerging. Cause I really do believe, between taking these times to do the meditations and taking the time to do these cold showers and then just really taking the time, it is for the first time in my life, I'm actually hearing my body. And then of course, all the work that's led me to this work right now. It's the first time I've ever really been in tune to hearing my body. And then even more so is actually listening. So it is really difficult, right? Because my body is like a little bit like, it's not unstabilized by what I'm doing, but it does bring up things. Like I say, I'm typically not a crier and I sit on here almost every day crying and, like they're not like hard tears or, sometimes they are like, but it's again, it like baffles me. And it's interesting. It's just, again, I think it's just this release of so much stuff that has been buried and held in. And, I was so ashamed of talking about, I had talked about, my therapist had shared a story about a movie and this family had this terrible tragedy happen, and we won't go into that. But what they did was, instead of like facing it, instead of communicating about it, they basically just buried everything and was like, don't ever talk about this. This never happened. We're cleaning it up. And then it, you could see like visibly how each person in the family was affected. Like, and again, because this is what I was asking, like my therapist, I was like, kind of what I was saying here is like, how did that little girl go to school? Like, how did that little girl that just witnessed this then just go to preschool and sing nursery rhymes? Like, how did I just go play with my dolls? Like, were my dolls now doing like attempting suicide? Were like, you know, like, or my dolls, were my dolls divorcing? Like, but quite honestly, like when I used to play Barbie all the time, like I thought this was straight normal. Like I didn't know, like Ken was always cheating on Barbie. I'm going to be straight. And he was cheating on Barbie with Skipper. Even worse. I know, it's embarrassing. Like every time Skipper was the mistress. Every time. And I'm like, what the heck? Like in hindsight, like that's just weird. Like, why was I doing that? You know, like what was the thought process, you know? And then a lot of times when I would play, like it was more like posing them. I was really more into like, I just want to set up the house. Like, and it would be these elaborate houses. And I had a really good imagination. Like at that age, it was like, I didn't have a lot of like accessories. And so like, you know, I didn't have, my cousin had it all. Like her mom got her all the, you know, the coolest sofa and the coolest kitchen and, you know, the coolest Barbie dream house. You know, I had the Barbie townhouse. You know, I had a couple brunette dolls. Again, I was like every other girl, and I thought I was a hairdresser, and, you know, I'd pull the haircut, it would go, and then it was just spikes, like, even like the movie. Like, I didn't draw on mine, but, you know, then those ones, sometimes they also became the mistresses. Like, it was a whole scandal in there. It was a lot of soap opera stuff going on with my Barbies. And, you know, but at the end, Ken and Barbie did get back together. You know, she forgave him. You know, Barbie was loyal, though. She was loyal. She didn't do nothing like that. She was busy decorating the house. You know, she was, you know, just having a good time. But like, I would have this little jewelry box, I remember, and it's so distinctive. It was like a brown jewelry box, but it opened up, and I was like, this is perfect. When it opens up, this is like the big screen TV. Like, we didn't have big screen TVs back then, but it was like, they was gonna have a movie theater before movie theaters were a thing in people's house. That's how good my Barbies were having it. But except for the affairs and all, you know, it's all that kind of stuff, you know. But it was, you know, it's a lot to kind of process. And again, I'm doing it in a pretty rapid thing, and I'm listening to my body. And so I think that's why for the past couple days, I've been a little bit out of sorts. Like even at this today, I had a moment this morning where I was like, okay, cool. Like I had my routine. I'm getting better at stuff. So like my son again, my youngest one has like starting to cough, and he's getting the croup, and he gets these croupy, like barky soundy coughs, and like that's embarrassing at school. Like I get it, it's uncomfortable. And so he's texting me like, I don't know if I should go to school. What do you think? And then again, he is the only person on earth that has this emergency bypass, and he gets into my phone if I'm rain, shine, asleep, in a class. It don't matter. It is like 911, and everybody has the same settings. We cannot figure out what it is. Like, if you know why, let me know. But on the same turn, I guess it is good that like mama is reachable in any condition. But I'm like, you cannot abuse this. And he knows, and he abuses it when he doesn't want to go to school. And that irritates me. And so before, I used to get irritated, like even earlier in this thing. But today I heard the text. And I just didn't answer. I didn't respond. I didn't get annoyed. That's the important part. I just stayed calm in my thing, and he went off to school. He was fine, you know. But when he gets to school, he was like, I'm coughing a lot. And then it turned out to be, I was like, why are these inhalers not working? And so I went and looked. He had been using his inhaler, but it ran out. It was at 000. And I was like, here we are. Here's probably, you know, a culprit of it. So I was like, fine, because I wanted him to get proper medication in him, and you know, he came home or whatever. But I took me off my thing, because I had a schedule, and now like picking him up in the morning was not part of the schedule. But I was like, and I usually am like, yes, fine. But I was like, no, I need 30 minutes at least. And then he was like, okay, I'll come after this class or whatever. Okay, fine. So like, I'm learning, I'm getting better. I'm creating boundaries and listening when my body is like, no, you know, all these things. So I'm getting better. I'm practicing. And so I'm going to give myself a big old round of applause for that. But then came home. Now it was time. It was obviously a little bit later, but I started going onto my own routine like I wanted to do. I try to now because I'm doing this. Like before I used to like do a lot of work in the morning. And now I'm like, okay, let me get my steps done so that I can come home and have like energy still to do this. So, you know, I was again tinkering in my mind, like maybe I should do the filming because I'm definitely more energized in the mornings versus the evenings. But I'm like, I'm still just, this is kind of the habit. I'm going to keep going with it for now. We'll see what happens. But anyway, so then I was doing my running and I started like, it was just, I could feel something in my body. I could feel it, just something in my body. And I was trying to push through. Like I was writing. I started thinking about like, it was a silly thing. I started thinking about what popped in my mind was Chris had, I always keep a dry erase board on the fridge. And my rule is if, you know, you take the last one and like, it's something like, say you take the last, like, okay, let me go back to this. So I just by nature stockpile. My auntie did it. And so even when the pandemic hit, I was like ready to go, like having extra TP, having extra paper towels, having extra cans of food, extra frozen food. Like this is my go-to. This is like I had been prepping for this my whole life. I was like, it is go time. Now you guys know why mom has 45 bags of chips in the house. Like, you know, like whatever it is, whatever it was. And because they were always like, why do you have all this? And then they were like, oh my gosh, mom, we are so happy, like, and grateful that we have all this like stuff. Like right now when people can't even have toilet paper, you know, I even had my own secret stash in my room because I was like, listen, I am not gonna sacrifice. Like, no, this is my secret stash. I never even had to pop into it, but it's still in there. I was like, listen, I don't know what is going to happen in life, but mama's got her secret stash at TP. I got enough I will ration it. I will do it, but I ain't going without my Charmin. Like, sorry. Like I've tried other kinds. It ain't the same. I'm a Charmin girl. And, so anyways, like it's my nature. So like, I'm always like, okay, if you take the last mustard or you take the last mayo, just put it on the board. And then I watch around like when it comes on sale. Cause I know I'm not in a hurry. Like we're not out of it, you know, or if there's something you want, put it on the board. And so like there was lunch bread on the board, very vague, very anything. And I had remembered, oh, I had recently bought sourdough bread and I put it in the freezer. And so I'll take that out for the lunch bread for the week or whatever. So I buy it and then, Chris is like, did you buy bread? And I was like, well, I got sourdough. And he's like, well, that was from the freezer. Did you buy bread? And I was like, no, I didn't, but I just took it out of the freezer. He's like, this isn't bread. Like you can't have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on this. And I was thinking he wanted lunch bread for Tyler's lunches. And obviously Tyler isn't eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because he's allergic to peanuts and he can't stand them. So, I mean, he eats them every day as part of his medicine since he was 8 years old. But you know, as part, he did a thing called, oral immunization therapy, or otherwise known as OIT, where it was like super micro doses, and he worked his way up and worked his way up and worked his way up. And now he has settled at the place where he eats 4 peanuts a day. And again, this goes back to my whole theory about like starting micro, small, and then building up, and then you know, achieve some kind of maintenance. And he could eat up to 24, or free eat, but he can't stand it. He has zero interest in participating in that. So, you know, I think he's used to, for a little while, he was doing 8, and like 4 was like where he settled and he's good. And now he like kind of takes like a little handful and pops them in of some spicy peanuts. And it took a long time to get there. I would like used to melt chocolate and cut them fine. And I try to cook them into a snickerdoodle and you name it. I tried like to hide it in eggs once. And, you know, he was like a bloodhound. He could sniff that out. He's like, this has peanut, you know, like he knew it. And like he'd be gagging. And we did Nutter Butters and chocolate covered Nutter Butters and peanut M&Ms. I mean, Reese's Pieces, like we've tried it all. Like soy butter sandwiches with the peanuts cut up and try to hide in it. So many different things. But anyways, I say all that to say, like, I just simply didn't know. I just took lunch bread as lunch bread. And like, he was just mean to me about it and frustrated. And like, I got really anxious about it. And I was like, well, I didn't know. Like, it didn't say like specifically, like, Wonder Bread or, wheat bread or whatever it is you wanted. Like, it just said lunch bread, and I got sourdough bread. Like, sometimes I get bun buns. Like, the kids don't like the plain normal sandwich bread, like, in the first place. So it's not like my go-to to get. So I felt really like upset about it for some reason. Like, I just didn't like the way he like huffed at me, and like, like the way he behaved was the way he behaved. I just didn't like the reaction I had. Like, it just made me feel really bad. Like, I don't know. I just felt like really uncomfortable. I felt really like undeserving. Like, you can go to a grocery store too. Like, I'm not the only one that could go to a grocery store, like I try to be very specific. Like I say, when I, want something, I'm like, I want the fruit that is 3 for $12. Like I can't, it's a bowl. It's a small thing. So when you come with a platter, it's not a bowl. The platter is $16.99, not 3 for $12. Like, I try to be very specific because I know I'm not always like clear sometimes in my conversating. Like, I think you know what I'm talking about, and I think you're in my head, and sometimes people are like, well, what are you talking about? Yeah, gone too far. You forgot to tell me some details in this story. So, I know that about me. So when I'm giving directions, especially to somebody like Chris, I try to be very, very specific as to like, this is what I want, and this is, how it is. So I felt really like, I don't know, I just felt really bad about it. I just felt like very, I don't know. I just felt bad. I felt bad that I didn't do it right for him. I felt bad that I was kind of talked to and treated that way. And I don't know. It just was just like a hostility. Like, it's just, and that's what it is. It's the hostile tones and the hostile energy that like gets me really worked up inside. Like, it just makes me feel very uncomfortable. I just don't, like, I don't like it. And so like, and I just never know like what version of him I'm going to get. And it's like, I can't anticipate. Like, if I know he's coming home angry, then it's like, okay, I know he's coming home angry. Like, I've had a rough day. Like, okay, that gives me like a piece of knowing. But just like when you just see, like, go downstairs and you're like, I don't know who I'm going to get. Like, I'll say hi. There's no answer, like, how was your day? Sometimes there's no answer. Like, it's just like, or then all of a sudden I'll be down there and there's just slamming and there's huffing and there's just like, and then you do try to talk and it's like, negative stuff. And it just makes me feel so like inside. It just gives me a stomach ache. It makes me feel really, really uncomfortable. So anyway, so I was thinking about that this morning, about how we had this interaction. And then again, I'm trying to fix it. I'm like, I actually, if I didn't know, like, like whatever. And I was like, have you ever tried it on like a Ritz? Like, they're really good. Like, I actually, for a little while, was in this like kick of like getting 2 Ritz crackers and making little mini peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the Ritz crackers. I don't know, something about the sweet and the salty and everything. And so I was trying to do that. And I'm like, rice cakes, like whatever else we had that like could kind of like fix it. And he was just like, ugh, no, I'll just eat something else then. And, can't have this on this. I was like joking around. I'm like, what about a tortilla? Like anything to try to just like fix the situation for him and then also fix it for myself, right? Like, to be out of this uncomfortable pain. So I was thinking about that this morning, and I was kind of like getting like fired up again about it. I was getting like upset. Like, I could tell inside, and I'm trying to write, like, to journal and to kind of get it out and process it. And then I was like really uncomfortable. And then I started thinking about my friend who I was saying yesterday, like, I would never know. And she's just such a sweet, like, smiley, happy woman, like, to know that like she has anxiety. So then like I wanted to fix it for her, like, not fix it, like I wanted to like, I'm like trying to think, my mom, when Dylan had tore his ACL and she knew I was a mess, sometimes she knows just the right kind of things to send me. And she sent me this like angel and a rock, and it had this whole saying about like, it was probably some religious saying, I don't know. It's like, one of those little things you get like at a tiny like store when you're, like a tiny store in a tiny town. I don't know. It's all I can think about, but it has like a more little, like almost like prayer card or angel on it too. And it was just like, when you have all your worries, like give it to the stone or whatever, you know. And oddly, for some weird reason, like I was like, okay, I was like so desperate in some days when I was like a mess over my son's injury. Like I would hold on to this thing and actually I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna give it to you because I can't, like, it is too much for me right now. I like cannot deal right now with this. And like it, honestly, for some weird reason, it actually did make me feel better. Like I felt like, okay, I like, and giving it to you right now, like you could give it back in an hour. Like I need a break of this. Right. So it was this like mental like thing. And so I was like, I should get her one of these, or maybe I should just give her this one. Like it's had its purpose with me, but then now my mom gave it to me. I wonder if I need it again, or, you know, and I went through this whole thing, but I was like, I really want to give her something, like to just say like, I care and thank you for trusting me, like with sharing something that was like super vulnerable, right? Like we all have these moments and things like that, like I hear you, you're not alone, like, you know. I wanted to be that. And then I started like thinking, and I could feel myself feeling off and anxious, and I'm trying to run and I'm looking at how many steps I've done, and I'm like, okay, I need to get this many steps because I do in my workout, it's about this many steps and I want to be done by the time I get home. And I realized right then and there, I was like, hold on, stop. Like right now, I know you want to push through. That is your default setting. You are feeling all kinds of stuff right now. Your body is completely dysregulated. You're rapid firing, like you're going to like, you have something going on. You're now thinking about your relationship with Chris. You're now suddenly wanting to like stop thinking about that, and you're wanting to go fix somebody else's problems. You are deep in your right hand. You are deep, deep, deep in your right hand. And no judgment. Like, I'm not sitting here saying you should be using your left hand or there's other things we can do. It's just number one step was like, I just needed to realize it. And so I was like, okay. And my nature is to just push through. We're going to just push through the pain. No pain, no gain. Life is painful. But I was like, you know what? I've done that all these years. Let's try it a different way. Worst comes to worst. Tomorrow I'm in the pain. It didn't work today. I'll sit in the pain and push through it. It's okay. That's still an option in the next time I feel pain, which could either be in a couple hours or tomorrow or next week, right? So I did something I've never really done before. I shut off my watch. I shut off the phone, and I just took a break. I went over to my window, which happenstance, the sun came out. And that's the second thing that I think is why, like, I'm off. It's been a few days of gray and rainy. And while those do have beautiful attributes to it, it does wear on my mental a little bit. Like, just something about it. Just seeing the gray for so many days in a row. It's just something. Although I think it's beautiful. I love rain. I actually think it's very peaceful. It gives me that permission to, like, unwind and stuff, like where the sun is like, I want to go. I want to live it up. But there's been something, because I've been practicing that, trying to get more sun. I don't sit there in the first thing in the morning and get the sun. I don't do all the things, but I try to get some sun. Like I've always had this theory about getting the sun. When my kids are sick, I'm like, you need vitamin D, you need to get out in the sun. You know, when Dylan had the tumor, we'd go out to the curb, you need to get the sun. Like my sons have had concussions, we need to go out and get the sun. I don't know what it is, something I feel in my soul from Mother Nature is telling me, I don't know, we need to go out in the sun. Like it will help us. And so I just literally went to my window. I leaned against my bed. I did a stretch. The sun was like pouring onto my back. I was like so at peace. Like I just breathed through. I was like, you were just in the shower. You were just dysregulated, and you were going to try to push through, because that's what you do even in there. But you're not pushing through when you're in there. You're silencing everything. You're quieting your mind. You're taking the deep breath. Like when you want to gasp and you want to pant because it's freezing, you don't, right? Or if you do, you grab it back, you hone it back, and then you take the breath. So that's what I did here today. I leaned against the bed. I took a few breaths. Then I got in the chair. I looked out the window and I literally leaned back. I closed my eyes. I had the sun just pouring on me, and it was so warm. It was like this blanket of just love and healing and rest, all those worries. all those feelings I had in my body just melted away. They just melted away. And I enjoyed that for probably a good 5, maybe 10 minutes. And then I said, okay, I checked in, like, how we doing now? Are we ready to get back on it? And it was like, yeah, I can go back to it. And I started writing, and I felt so much better. I was so proud of myself. Like, I even had to like write that. Like, I am so excited that I had the realization to notice something was in my body, and to not just do what I only knew what to do, is to always just push through, just hammer it through. Life hurts. You're in pain. That's okay. You're going to get through it. It's building resilience. But this was building a different kind of resilience. This was like acknowledging like what in the past I had done. All those times that I didn't listen to the cues from my body and the clues that are saying, you need to stop. Like, this is too much. I'm overwhelmed. I'm overstimulated. I'm not okay. I'm not well in this moment. And I need you to hear me. And now that I've become more in tune to the body, to where I can listen, like I say, even just like when I injured my arm the other day, and I listened instead of pushed through, and was like, I'm still going to do my weight because this is the weight I'm at. No, I honed it back. I then went to the lower weight, and sometimes I went to no weight, and sometimes I didn't even move the arm because it hurt much in that move. It hurt too much in that move. It hurts much. It hurts much. But no, it hurt too much in that moment. And so listening to my body, it was able to heal. And by the time I went to the class again on Friday, it was fine. There was no issue. But had I pushed through, who knows? Like, most likely it still would have been hurting. Who knows? It could still be hurting today. So I think it's just so important that I listen to my body. And so I'm saying that to you because what are the cues that you didn't hear in your body today? Like, or yesterday, or last week? Like, what times, like, was your body saying, I don't feel comfortable in this conversation, or, I'm tired, or whatever it may be? Like, what happened in you, or this hurts? Like, what were you just not listening to and pushing through? And that's okay. Like, there's no, like, it's not like, I should have listened. Like, it's not like that. It's like realizing it. It's like seeing, oh, okay, here's where that was happening. And it like sets you up for this process where if it happens again and you're not listening to your body, you now have this other set of information and tools to be like, oh, wait a second, this kind of feels familiar. I don't think I'm listening to my body. Let me listen. Let's see what happens, and let's do that. And so, like, having the courage to go back and not beat yourself up and not be like, and I think that was my trouble for so long. It was just like, you ate all that. Like, of course you're going to look like this. Or, you yelled at your kids. Like, what do you think you are? Like, is that the relationship you want with your kids? Like, it was just very mean. It was very like, it was just, if I was I wouldn't talk to my friend that way. I just wouldn't. It's just not in my nature to talk to people like that. And so why am I talking to myself this way? And then why do I do these things? Like, so like understanding kind of the why, and then saying, it's okay. Like, we did that. That happened. I did that. Not we, I'm not multiple people here, but like I am in a way, because I think I really do feel like, I think that this is like my new thought. It's like, I think that we are reborn every day. I think every day that we wake up, it's a new us. It's a new opportunity. It's a new day. It is a new rebirth. And what we do with it is up to us. It's all our choice. We can choose to live however we want in that day. Like, you could have work and you could choose to just not simply go. You could choose to not call in. Like, you could choose to lay in bed. You could choose to not have a job and then go to every single place that you can think of until you get a job. Like, there's so many things that we could do within our day or time. We all get 24 hours, and how we spend those is 1000% our own choices, even though we feel like we don't have a choice because we have to go to work, or we have to go to this doctor's appointment, or we have to do this, or we have to do that. No. We have a choice. We do not have to do any of it. We get to do a lot of these things, but we do not have to. We impose those rules that we have to. Like, you can go in and quit. you could do a lot of things. Like, yeah, is it going to be comfortable? You know, maybe not. Maybe. Who's to say? Like, you can quit and then start writing your screenplay and, you know, whatever it is. Like, there's so many things. So, I say all that to say, we get these choices. We get this opportunity to be reborn every day. And, you know, be really kind to yourself. Take the time and think today I'm asking if you could just think today at a time, near present, long time ago, where your body was trying to tell you something and you didn't listen. And go back to that person, go back to that day, and try to think, what was my body trying to tell me? Like, my body was saying it was uncomfortable. My body was saying it was tired. What was my body trying to say? So the next time you feel that again, you have like oh, I remember. So that's what happened to me today. Like, I was able to say, my body doesn't feel right now. And I know that my default setting wants me to just push through, because that's what I do. That's how I'm resilient. I'm gritty. I'm tough. You know, if I say something, I'm going to get it done. And that's great. They're phenomenal qualities. But I'm looking to balance it out. There is a time for the grit and there is a time for growth. There is time for both. And I have to respect that each of them need their own place and time in order to have a more balanced life. I can't be up here on grit all the time, because gritty people, they're not the nicest people. They're in your face. They're like, why aren't you doing? Like, you know, they're judging because they have judged themselves so hard a lot of times, and their expectations are so off the charts. But in this growth phase, right, I'm trying to learn and be more compassionate to myself and gentle. And I think that that's really helpful for me to see this world in a more gentle way. Like, I became gritty because I had to. It wasn't like I woke up as a little girl and I was like, hell yeah, I want to be gritty. You know, like, it was my survival skill. It was my coping mechanism. It was everything I needed. I so believed. And I do think it's still going to be part of what takes me so far in this world and in this life, and have this ability to connect with other people. But I also think incorporating a gentler side and allowing this other energy to come into my life and share that energy too is just beautiful and magical. Like, I was so thankful for myself today for having the courage to say, all right, practice what you preach. Like, we're doing a left hand thing right now. Let's try the right hand thing. Let's try the left hand and let's see what happens. If we don't like it, we want to go, it doesn't change anything. We still feel angst and all these things. There's so many other things. And just by having the awareness and then following it up with the choice, I had this really cool moment that now like reinforces it in my mind and in my brain and in my body, that says the next time I feel this way in any of these circumstances, I now am building the courage and the confidence little by little in a very safe environment. Nobody knew, right? This was just something that I was doing, a theory I was testing on my own self. It wouldn't affect anybody else but myself. And so it was a very safe, a very controlled, kind of very small. It was a 1 pound at a time kind of thing. And there we are. It worked. And so I'm not saying every time I'm going to be like, oh, radar's on, like my body's off, but maybe I will get there and maybe I won't. I don't know. But I know that I am one step closer to being that in tune to my body and that aware that something is going on and I need to give myself a moment. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm even in the middle of writing, I'm in the middle of running, everything needs to stop for a moment. Even if it's just 60 seconds, I need to stop, because it's just too much. I don't have to live in a state of anxiety and dysregulation and destabilization. My foundation is getting solid. And before, it was mushy and gushy and non-existent and riddled with holes from all the hurts before. But they're getting patched in and they're getting rebuilt. And I'm building a really strong foundation, like 1 pound, one second, one choice, one day at a time. And so can you. Like, everything you want is possible. And your life, if you're happy with it, keep going. Like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I cheer for you. Like, that makes me just so inspired and motivated to know that there is this beautiful, happy ending out there. But if there's any doubt in your mind, if there's anything in your mind that says, I don't know if this is exactly the life I should be living. Like, I don't know if I'm okay with just being average anymore. Like, I don't know if it feels good to just do things for everybody else and neglect myself. I don't know if talking to myself this way is perhaps the best thing. And I don't know if talking to other people is perhaps the best this way. So I don't, I think a lot of the answers are within, and we just get so numbed and silenced because we just do what everybody says. We go to school, we do the things, we go get the 9-to-5 job, and there's so many other options. And I think that that's one of the cool things about like this newer generation too, because they're not all about that 9-to-5 life. Like, a lot of them are like, creators. They're not about like sticking with a company for loyalty. On the contrary, I was talking to my daughter's boyfriend and they were saying, yeah, you get the most pay when you first start a job. So there's this like phenomenon where people are in a job for a few years and then they're leaving because there's like almost like another pay boost. But then now it's like the cycle because everybody has people, they're like coming and going. But that's great because you have this sharing of ideas, but on the same turn, you have to retrain, read this, and overall, this is just kind of a long-term temp employee. Whereas before, right, like back in the day, it was like, okay, after 10 years, you got the watch, and after 15 years, you got the jacket, and after 20 years, you got the gold pen, and, like, it was like a badge of honor to stay at a company for a long time, and you were rewarded with a lovely pension and different things, and that's just not the case anymore. Like, I think that people are realizing that the decisions we make when we are young kids, whether it be professions or companies or people, we don't have to be with those people and we don't have to keep that decision for the rest of our lives. We can change and evolve. I had no idea in any of my life forms and days that, like this is like the things that would excite me. I should have known, like when were the moments I was most happy in my life? It was sitting around a table, talking with my grandma, my aunties, my friends, in a car, anywhere, on a walk with my son. Like, those are the moments that I am alive. So it's not it shouldn't be surprising that by writing and communicating and filming and doing these things, I feel alive again. And, you just have to look around and see what it is that inspires you. So go out there today. Think back to a time recently that perhaps you just didn't listen to your body, and be very kind and just make note of it. Like, make note so that if it comes up again and your body feels that, you kind of have this connection, and perhaps the next time you can choose differently. And if you don't, then perhaps the time after it again, you can evaluate it again. But I say all that to say, thank you so much for tuning into me. Please go out there, give somebody a smile, give somebody a compliment. Watch them glow up. Have a lovely day, morning, evening, night, whatever it is. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.